I don't have a problem with DNA being mandatory at birth. DNA mandatory, child support mandatory.
So a bunch of women in Florida are pissed off at Ron DeSantis. He's taking away their alimony.
It's that time of year again. Florida alimony reform. Number one, they're trying to remove permanent alimony. Now, what is permanent?
Modern women in an uproar because they can't use men as cash cows anymore for their lifestyle.
My opinion is that DNA should be part of the maternity package in hospitals.
July 1st, permanent alimony is a thing of the past in Florida.
DNA tests should be mandatory for every child born, regardless of marital status.
It is about time fate favors men. We've been getting burned far too long. Kindly subscribe to the channel, as it is our sole form of support. Thank you.
We're not going to make this about gender because I've seen both sides do it, but if family court orders you to partake in a paternity test and you refuse to cooperate, they do have the authority to issue a warrant for your arrest and send you to jail. So just keep that in mind.
So a bunch of women in Florida are pissed off at Ron DeSantis because he's taken away their alimony. I find it fascinating that all these women who've been voting for 100 years against their own self-interest are shocked when it finally affects them. Good luck there, buddy.
Good. Get your ass up and go to work like we do. Alimony is nothing but theft. It should have been abolished years ago. The fields and construction sites are open. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Come on now. I love this for them. Why do women rely on a man who already proven to not be reliable, so they divorce them? You should have been independent sooner. We have to understand it's all about the money. These women are only upset because they can't use men for alimony anymore. Ever since this permanent ban passed, they've been pretty angry because it takes away the financial safety net they were banking on. For years, some women relied on alimony as a way to maintain their lifestyle without putting in the work post-divorce. Now that men are no longer obligated to fund their ex-wives indefinitely, it's hitting hard. The anger isn't about losing a relationship or support, it's about losing that easy income stream they had counted on. Just incredible.
If you're not married and you have doubts that you're the father of a child, make sure you're not on the birth certificate and don't sign the voluntary declaration of paternity. And if you get served with court papers, request a DNA test. If you are married, the law assumes that the child is yours, so you have 2 years to ask for a DNA test before you're legally the child's father.
I'm getting a lot of comments saying that paternity tests should be given at every birth. And while I do think that it's necessary in some cases, it is actually very common for the father to decline to do the paternity test. In this particular case, the father thought that he was the only one that the woman was sleeping with. They both signed a voluntary declaration that he was the father and that there were no other possible father. Now the question is, how could he write that when he doesn't know who this lady is sleeping with? But in his mind, he was with her all the time, so there's no way that she could have been sleeping with someone else. Well, lo and behold, she found a way to sleep with somebody else, and there was another father. And there was a positive DNA test for that particular father. So this lady is facing charges of perjury because she lied to the court, let them know that there was no other fathers, and she also signed a voluntary declaration of paternity, which is also under penalty of perjury, saying that there were no other possible fathers. So like I said in the previous video, the paternity judgment was overturned and he did get his money back. My client is still thinking about whether or not he wants to press criminal charges against her. But y'all be safe out there, for real.
This story right here is exactly why DNA tests should be mandatory. And the reason why men refuse to take the test is because they don't want to hurt their woman. Men often refuse to take the test because they don't want to damage their relationship or hurt their partner's feelings. But at what cost? The fear of upsetting someone shouldn't outweigh the importance of truth, accountability, and fairness in parenthood. Don't get stuck with another man's child because you're afraid of upsetting her. That should be the least of your worries. Because in the long run, it will only hurt you mentally and financially.
If you falsely accuse a man of being your baby's daddy, it's called parentage fraud, and it's no joke. It's a new era. Ladies are legally free to be with whomever they feel free to be with. And for some women, an honest mistake could be made. Just make sure you're sincere and you've done your homework. And if you're making a legal claim to force a resistant man to claim your child as his dependent, make sure you can back it up with the facts.
My boy is married to the lady and signed the birth certificate, but the child isn't biologically his. Does she pay for the rest of her life for her mistake, like the man is forced to? Also, if you falsely accuse a man of rape or sex harassment, you should go to jail. There's no way that can ever be an honest mistake by ruining a man's life. These women know exactly who and how many guys they're sleeping with. Claiming ignorance is just a way to escape responsibility. If a man receives a false paternity claim and she tries to pin that baby on him, there should be serious consequences. She should be in jail. It's not just about deception. It's a betrayal that has lifelong effects on a man's emotional well-being, finances, and future. False paternity isn't a minor slip-up. It's calculated and manipulative, preying on a man's sense of duty and love for a child that isn't even his.
Florida family law tip of the day. Governor DeSantis did sign the alimony reform bill yesterday, so effective today, July 1st, permanent alimony is a thing of the past in Florida. In addition, it limits the amount of alimony the recipient can get to their reasonable need or 35% of the difference of the parties' net incomes, whichever is less.
So I wanted to talk about DNA testing because I've seen a lot of people, like a lot of females, get mad and say that they'll like leave their man, which is fine. You could leave your man, who cares? But they'll be like, I'll leave my man and I'll take the baby away from him, or I'm so offended, I'm so upset, I'm so mad. But I'm just confused because I feel like if you don't have nothing to hide, then that's not something you should ever get upset about, be mad about, or feel like you're gonna leave your man for. Like, if you're not doing anything, what's the issue of your man getting a test and just being positive that it's his kid? Because not for nothing, there's a lot of women out here that, you know, have had a man raise their kid, and then 5 years later, or even longer than that, the man finds out that he's not the biological father. And there's already all this attachment, all of these memories that was made. So, you know, I don't understand why it's so hard to just be like, yeah, go ahead, get a DNA test and not feel some way about it. I get being like, oh, you know, I didn't sleep with anybody, but then just prove that. Like, if you didn't do it, just prove it. It shouldn't be like, you shouldn't get that mad. Like, personally, if my man was to ask me for a DNA test, I wouldn't care because I know I'm not doing anything, and I know I didn't do anything to prevent my man from, you know, seeing something that he shouldn't, because he's just gonna see that it is his kid. And whatever you decide to do relationship-wise after that is on you. But like, taking the kid away, that's extreme, that's crazy. And it's honestly pointless, because just because your man wants to like 100% know, and if your man is asking for a DNA test, he probably has a reason to be asking for that. And if he doesn't to you, well, just give it to him. Like, honestly, what's the big deal?
Women don't ever have to question the baby because they don't have that option. They know it's theirs. Men, on the other hand, have to trust that the child is theirs based solely on the word of their partner. And that's exactly why a DNA test is so important, especially in modern dating, where it's not uncommon for many women to have multiple partners they're messing with. The risk of uncertainty is higher than ever. Men deserve clarity in situations that could impact their entire lives, both emotionally and financially. The moment a woman threatens to take the child away or leave the relationship when a DNA test is mentioned, it raises red flags. These emotional threats aren't just manipulative. They often signal that she has something to hide. Why else would someone resist a simple test that ensures transparency? The real issue lies in using these threats to guilt or control the man, making him feel that asking for certainty is somehow wrong. It's a tactic to avoid accountability while keeping the man trapped in a potential lie. Mandatory DNA testing would take away the ability for these situations to escalate into manipulation. and it would protect men from being deceived into lifelong commitments based on false pretenses.
Every couple should get a DNA test done on their child before they leave the hospital with the baby. Yes, I think it should be included in the birth certificate that a DNA test has been performed and this so person is the father. Yes, paternity fraud is sick. It's not a good thing.
I had 2 guys call in. They work at DNA testing centers. One guy had to quit. One guy still works there. He told me 40% of the children are not the man's child. 40%. 40%. He said 40%.
Somebody call
and
Maury.
it's usually
make DNA testing
it's
mandatory.
It's 2 scenarios. It's where the woman, the person's getting a DNA test because the woman claims that is their child. Turns out it's not. The other one is where the parent is on a deathbed and makes a confession, or they need a liver transplant, blood transfusion, and the blood type. There's no way that can actually be the father. So then they find out because of medical reasons. You mean that's not my father? Then the father finds out from that way. He said it took such a toll on him that he could no longer do it because he would be sitting on the phone counseling the men and the grown children who these women falsely accuse. We see it on Moore, we see it on paternity court, but yet we say men need to be held accountable.
DNA test for paternity should be required before signing a birth certificate. Mandatory DNA test at birth for unmarried couples seems like a good idea. For many married couples, the husband is on the hook, even if it's not his child. I got so much hate for doing a DNA test right after my son was born. 15 years later, it is still the best news I've gotten in my life. DNA testing at birth should be law. Women need to take accountability and need to pay back all child support if it was paid.
A woman breaks up with you, she automatically loses 30 pounds, does her dissertation, gets her doctorate, she's bought 3 homes, she has a cow.
Okay, so 50% of women surveyed admitted to having a fallback partner, such as a gym buddy, an ex-boyfriend, like the one that got away.
When a woman leaves you, she has left you in her mind so long ago. Okay, men leave on a whim. That's a man thing to do. Women, that's why a woman breaks up with you, she automatically loses 30 pounds, does her dissertation, gets her doctorate, she's bought 3 homes, she has a cow that she milks herself, and it's all in 1 year.
Bessie
in 1 year. Because women are planners, okay? So if you think that there are some things that are happening and your relationship is not quite what it should be, just know she gonna be all right because she probably has been taking care of herself mentally.
But you're talking about...
I'm pretty sure this is one of the many reasons why men are staying single. The risk of betrayal and manipulation is real, and men are becoming more cautious. If 50% of women have backup partners while married, then what is the point of marriage? Marriage is supposed to be about trust, loyalty, and building a life together. But if half of women have someone waiting in the wings, it completely undermines the foundation of commitment. How can a man feel secure in a relationship when there's always a possibility that he's being replaced or lied to? This backup partner mentality makes it clear that some women are not fully invested in the relationship. They're keeping one foot out the door. In today's world, men are asking themselves, what's in it for me? If they're expected to sacrifice and commit while knowing their partner might not be doing the same, the entire concept of marriage loses its value. More and more men are waking up to this reality, and they're making the choice to walk away before they find themselves trapped in a relationship where they're just another option, not a priority.
Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about paternity fraud, because I've been seeing these videos going around where they're saying DNA should be mandatory at birth. I don't have a problem with DNA being mandatory at birth, but DNA being mandatory at birth should be part 1 of a part 2 paperwork. DNA mandatory, child support mandatory. So the minute that DNA is proved, child support starts. How about that? Same way you want to be sure that you're taking care of the right child, it's the same way I want to be sure that whether we're together or not, my child will be provided for. It is only fair. But I never hear nobody talks about that part. Oh, You should have DNA testing at birth. Men should be taking care of kids that's not theirs. But nobody's saying we should have child support at birth. You're not married to that man. That man does not come home to you. That man does not provide a home and security for you. You should have child support at birth. Immediately, right away. Even if he's your boyfriend, even if you're together. The same day. The baby come out today, you go to the child support office as soon as you could walk. That's how it should be done.
I would have to disagree. Child support is intended for parents who don't take care of their child, but it's often misused or misunderstood in many cases. If the man is taking care of his child, then why would he be on child support? But it's meant to ensure that the child's financial needs are met when one parent isn't contributing. But that's not always how it plays out. The system doesn't always consider the complexities of individual situations, and sometimes it becomes more about punishing the father rather than ensuring the child's well-being. In cases where the father is actively involved and contributing, it feels more like a financial trap than a way to support the child. You can't compare child support to mandatory paternity tests either. A mandatory paternity test ensures that the man is actually the biological father before any obligations like child support are placed on him. It's about establishing truth and fairness from the start, while child support is about ensuring ongoing responsibility after the fact. It is not the same.
Ladies, would you be okay with a DNA test being a requirement as soon as you gave birth to your child? Meaning they would test the child and then test the father right there at that moment before a birth certificate is signed. Quick scenery change. So my thing is this. Why would anyone be opposed to that as part of the normal routine of giving birth, right? Because we're all making this drastic assumption that we know for sure that that child belongs to the man that may be present or not in the room. And there are a lot of things that can happen. You know, birth certificates can get easily signed without a lot of proper identification. Anybody's name can be put on there if they agree. And in some states, if you are married, you are the presumed father, okay, of that child if it comes out of your wife with no DNA test. It's just the law until you go to court and prove otherwise or request a DNA test. So I know, you know, women want a lot of, you know, reassurances and things like that from men in many different forms, right? They want to make sure that they have marriage licenses, and they want to make sure that, you know, they have access to assets, money, bank accounts. But I'm just wondering, why is it bad or frowned upon when a man says, I like to ensure that that child is mine because I have no other way of knowing other than maybe it looks like me. In some countries, there is a good chance, like a 25% chance, that that baby doesn't belong to the father. Right? In some countries where polygamy and open relationship lifestyles are very prominent, how do you know? What do you guys think? Oh, wait. So another thing to consider, too, is like the financial impact, right? So when you sign up as the father, you are signing up to be financially bound to that child, right? Whether you're married or not. So your name being on that birth certificate bounds you to financially supporting that child. Child support, all the legalities and all the rights that you would have to that baby. And I know people may say, well, what does it matter? Because if you love the child and you love the woman, who cares? Because if it's not your bloodline, you should know that. And the man who actually impregnated the woman should be responsible for financially supporting that child. Unless you deem otherwise. Unless everybody's in agreement, that's what you guys decided to do. More power to you. But for cases where men are manipulated and lied to,
men who actually find out they're not the father go through immense suffering in the court system trying to prove their case. The emotional, financial, and psychological toll it takes is staggering. What's worse is that the burden of proof often falls squarely on the man's shoulders. And even when DNA evidence proves he's not the biological father, in many cases, courts still hold these men financially responsible for children that aren't theirs, either due to previous assumptions of paternity or simply because they've already been paying child support. The fact that men can be forced to carry the burden of a child that isn't biologically theirs is crazy. They're not just paying with their wallets, they're paying with their peace of mind, their emotional well-being, and their future. It's a system that, in many cases, doesn't allow them a fair opportunity to walk away from a situation that they should have never been in to begin with. It's insane.